Okay, so this program that you see here is called Fusion 360. It is a CAD program made by the same people who made Tinkercad, but it's a lot more powerful program. You can do a lot more custom stuff with it. The downside to it, though, is that you do have to have it installed on your computer. You can't just go to the website like Tinkercad. So I figured I would walk through a quick tutorial of some of the basic tools you can use in here, and then you guys can decide whether you'd rather use this one or Tinkercad to design your engine mount. All right, so the main difference between this and Tinkercad is that instead of kind of dragging and dropping shapes in and then changing their dimensions, in this one you have to make everything yourself. It's all custom made. But that does mean you have more control over the dimensions and how you want it to look. All right, before we get too into it, we're going to go over the view controls, and they're really similar to what Tinkercad was. So you can use right click here, and if you hold right click and move your mouse, it rotates your viewpoint. All right, so here you can see I'm rotating everything around. If you use the middle mouse button, so the scroll wheel, if you click and hold that down and move your mouse, it pans it, so it'll drag it side to side without rotating it. All right, you can also use this view cube in the top right, same as you would for Tinkercad, if you're more comfortable doing it that way. All right, so I'm going to click home here to take us back to the home view. All right, and your first thing you're going to have to do in any design that you're trying to make is to make a sketch. All right, and after that, there's two main tools we can use, and we'll talk about them kind of one after the other. But for either one, the first thing you're going to be doing is making yourself a sketch. So you'll come over here to the top left, click this create a sketch button, and then you have to choose a plane that you want to work in. And honestly, it doesn't matter what plane you start off in, because you can orient your view however you want. So just pick one. All right, so now once we've started our sketch, you can see all these tools in the top row have changed. And that's what we're going to use to draw out whatever shape we want to have for our design. All right, so we're just going to start off with something real simple with a tube for our motor mount, right? So we can come over here, we can use this circle tool, and wherever we click is where it's going to place the center point. So we'll just put it right here in the middle of our screen. And then this dimension that it's giving us right here is the diameter. So we can adjust it by dragging the circle around and choosing our size like that, or we can go and we can type in the exact size we want. So in this case, we're going to type in 29 millimeters and hit enter, and that's going to set the diameter of the circle as 29, right? So the reason we chose 29 is because that's the diameter of our motor. So that's why we're doing that. All right. So then this will be the inside wall of our motor mount tube. And then to do the outside wall of it, we can just make another circle, click here at that same center point, and drag it out. And then we have to decide how thick we want these walls. So, that's up to you, how thin you can think you can get away with versus making it thicker to be stronger, but it's going to be heavier. So that's kind of just your decision to make. For this one, we're just going to go with, let's say, 5 millimeter walls, which means that our diameter would have to be a total of 39. 29 from the middle and then 5 on either side. All right, so you can see we have our 29 millimeter circle and our 39 millimeter circle here. Okay, once we're happy with a sketch of a piece that we're trying to make, what we'll do is we'll click this finish sketch button. And then if we come over here, this next tool that we're going to use is the extrude tool. So we can click this right here for extrude and select the area of our sketch that we want to make into our piece. So if we select this area between the two circles, and then we can drag this up and down to choose a height, or again, just type the height in. Let's just go with something simple and say 100 right here. You can see how it extrudes it out like that. You click OK over there, and you've got your motor mount tube, right? So that's the sketch tool and the extrude tool. The other way you can do projects like this, so okay, I guess if we were going to keep on going with this, to make our next sketch, to say if we wanted to put in our engine block ring at the top, we would click create a sketch, and then for the plane for this sketch, we can choose this face of our motor mount tube right here. So now anything we draw will be on the same plane as this top face, kind of like when you chose the work plane in Tinkercad. So here if we come in, we make ourselves a circle that's, you know, the same size as our outer ring, and then make another one in here that is slightly smaller than our inner diameter, right? Let's say this one has a diameter of 20. We can click finish sketch, and then if we extrude that area, you got to be careful because right now it just wants to extrude the area here, so you got to hold shift and select them both. And now if we extrude that area, let's go up 5 millimeters, you can see it makes this area where if you look from the bottom, we've got a ring where the hole at the top is smaller than the hole at the bottom, so the engine can slide in but not shoot all the way through the top. Alright, so that's one way to do it. The other method that I'm about to show y'all is using the rotate tool instead of extrude. And for this kind of work where we're kind of designing everything around a central tube, the rotate tool I think is more efficient, but it does take more planning, right? We could just keep working off of this, adding in centering rings wherever we wanted them, and it would work, but it would take more steps than if we use the rotate tool. All right, so down here at the bottom, you have this history bar. So if you ever want to undo anything, you can take this and drag it back to whichever step you want to undo. So if I want to undo that last extrude, I take it back to there. The sketch, the previous extrude, the previous sketch, and then all the way back to nothing. All right, and then you can always drag it back forward unless you change anything. All right, so we're going to go all the way back to a blank canvas. We're going to start a sketch. We're going to pick a plane, same as we did before. All right, and this time, what we're going to do is instead of drawing what we think it should look like from the top down and then extruding it out, we're going to draw a cross section of it that we can rotate around a central point. All right, so this one's a little more abstract, and it kind of would take some practice to get used to, but it does end up being pretty convenient. All right, so what I'm doing here, I'm putting in this line just as a reference, so I know how far away from this central point I want to go. And you've got to think in terms of radius when you're doing a rotate like this instead of diameter. So if we want our diameter of our inner circle for that body tube, or for the motor mount tube, to be 29, we would have to set this distance as half of that, so 14.5. All right, and then I'm also going to put in a reference line here in the middle. We're just going to say it's 100 millimeters tall, just as something to base the rest of our stuff off of. All right, and the cool thing about this is if you think this dimension is getting in the way, you can drag it to the other side, get it out of there. You can even delete it entirely. But, you know, there's no reason to, and you can just move it off to the side out of the way. Okay, so now that we've kind of got our starting point here, what I'm going to do Oh, and what I did with these two lines, you see how they're kind of orange and dashed? Those are called construction lines. You can push X whenever you're trying to draw a line, and it will change it from regular to construction back and forth. And construction lines, it's just an easy way to note to yourself that they are for reference only, not part of your actual drawing. All right, so for my actual drawing here, I'm going to take this line and go straight up all the way to 100. And then we're going to go out 5 millimeters and straight back down to the base and over, and make ourselves a rectangle like this. All right, and so by doing this, what we've done is we've created the wall of our motor mount tube. Okay, and so off the sides of this, we can put in our centering rings. And we can also add our engine block at the top here. So we're going to make the thickness of that 5 millimeters as well. And to get all the way back to the middle here would be 19.5. I want to leave some room for that ejection charge to fire, so we're just going to say 9.5. All right, and so by doing that, we've created a little rectangle here that when we rotate this around, you'll see it creates that lip on the top, like same as we did last time. All right, we're also going to come in here and put in some centering rings. So I'm going to transform ourselves back to a construction line by pushing X. And then I'm going to come, if you move your cursor up and down this central line, wherever it starts to show that triangle, like it's showing right now, that's the midpoint of this line. So we know that right here is right in the middle. And if the diameter of our body tube that I was talking with you all about yesterday is 65 millimeters for a BT80, we're going to want this to be half of that. So that would be 32.5. All right, so now we know that our centering rings have to go exactly this far out to make them fit snugly in that body tube. All right, so we can take our line tool here and actually another tool that's actually super useful is this offset tool. So if you want to, say, make another line for reference of where you want to put your centering rings, that's a certain distance away from the middle here, you can use the offset tool, click on this line, and then come into, it's weird that it's not showing on my recording screen. There should be a pop-up that lets you type in how far offset you want this to be. So I'm going to go ahead and type in 25 millimeters, and it's going to offset that line up there. Okay. You can also do it the opposite direction by typing in -25, and it'll offset it the other way. Okay, so now I have these centering ring lines that are going to be evenly spaced out from the middle. And then we can take our line here and start drawing in the rectangles for our centering rings. Okay, and it's not as complicated as it looks when I'm doing this, because all of these snaps that it's like automatically snapping to perpendicular and stuff, it kind of just does that stuff by itself. So it's not as bad as it looks with all these different constraints shown in here. All right, so once we've kind of got this set up the way we want it to, we come over here and we click Finish Sketch. All right, and then instead of extruding it like we did last time, you're going to use the Rotate or the Revolve tool. And we're going to come in here and select this whole entire thing. And then you have to select the axis that you want to revolve it around. So we're going to choose this construction line that we put in the middle here. and it's going to revolve it 360 degrees around that line. And you can see how it created our motor mount tube, our centering rings, and our engine block just off of this one little cross section that we made. All right, so it's more work to set this up, but the actual creation of the piece ends up being much more efficient. So it just depends on which way kind of clicks best with you. All right, some other cool things you can do that will help the strength of your piece. There's tools in here for fillets and chamfers, which kind of blend together sharp corners. So especially with 3D printed material like we're going to be working with, these sharp corners are points where stress gets introduced. So if you can come in here anywhere there's a corner like that, and you can click on it, and then you can select all of them, honestly. And then adjust the radius of that fillet. So I'm going to say just a 1 millimeter. All right, so what that does is it makes that transition between these two perpendicular faces a little bit easier. All right. And then there's all kinds of other tips and tricks you can do if you want to get real into it. Like you can cut out material to make your thing lighter, or add more centering rings, or there's still the engine hook that y'all have to design and figure out how to get in there. So all kinds of stuff like that I'm going to leave up to y'all to try and play around with and figure out. But this is just another tool you have at your disposal to use. All right.